I served on the library board just outside Cincinnati for 6 years. And I'm going to tell you something. The libraries have been hijacked. And I really commend you for introducing this piece of legislation, because every liberal thinking person in the whole state of Idaho is going to come at you. It's one thing to protect the computers in the schools. It's another thing to try to do it in the libraries. I didn't ask to serve on the library board. The county commissioners and the common pleas judges make the appointments to the library board. They called me and they said, Phil, our libraries are terrible. They don't represent our community, and will you serve on the board and try to straighten this out? I said, yeah, I kind of like being outnumbered 6-1, you know. And there were 7 people on the library board, so I go in there and they thought I was a book burner. I didn't ask that one book be removed from the library. I wanted to study it and I wanted to know what was going on. Let me tell you what's going on with your public libraries all across America. The American Library Association is a trade association based in Chicago, Illinois. They have nothing to do and have no power over your libraries. The libraries belong to you, the taxpayers, but you have no voice. You go into a library and you object to an age-inappropriate book. Let's say you're not even asking that it be removed, that at least it be taken out of the reach of children. Or you try to filter the internet and say that we don't want people coming to our libraries, especially the pedophiles. And Sean already talked about this, and they are going there. There have been situation after situation. A book that thick called Dangerous Access that was put together by a former librarian that counts numerous situations of children being abused, sexually abused in the bathrooms. Usually it's men on boys. They sit at the computer, they get all excited, they're looking at pornography. The librarians won't do a thing about it because they say there's a library bill of rights that says that children and adults have the right to see what they want to. That library bill of rights comes from the American Library Association that has no authority whatsoever, but the libraries adopt those policies. When these noble people like Mac is going to introduce this, and I can't tell you how much courage it's going to take, but another thing that we found out when we try to do this in Ohio is that the librarians will be going to Boise on taxpayer money, they will be paid while they're down there to lobby against this bill. I mean, is that an injustice or not, that they're using your taxpayer money to fight you? So I'm telling you, you need to keep your eye on this thing, because Mac and the people that support this are going to need your support, because the average person, you know, they're going to call them book burners and everything else. They have no right to have unlimited access to anything they want on the computers. So that's what you're up against. But the machinery, and they control the money and they control everything else. And so your library needs to change. And you need to have library board members who will say, and I'm not saying that the way it is on, you know, probably, maybe here that's altogether different, I don't know, in a town with high community standards. But the only way you can fix this thing is to offer to serve on the library board. But in my case, it was 7 years, and I ended up serving 6 because I ended up moving out of the county. But boy, did I learn a lot about what was going on behind the scenes and how the other side, the pro-pornography people, had taken over our library system. Now, I hadn't said anything about that anywhere else, Mac, but I think you had a right, and the people have a right to know that this courageous man and what he's going to do is going to get a lot of flack, but what he's doing is right. And I would like for you to tell him that you appreciate what he's doing with your round of applause.
Another thing, do a survey of your community. Are all the computers on your library filtered? Craig got the law, tried to get a law that says all computers have to be filtered for everybody. And your legislature said, oh no, adults should have pornography in the library. No, there are countless incidences of adults looking at porn on the library and molesting kids. Looking at porn on the library and harassing the librarians. One man's a famous case. One man followed this librarian home, got on the bus with her. She never knew about it. Raped her, killed her on the way home. Every library and every computer should be porn-free. The American Library Association sounds like a good name. They want every library computer unfiltered for kids and adults. That's their goal. And so they are the ones influencing your library. Doesn't matter that your state law, that you only got halfway, and it says it's only going to be blocked when kids are on it. Go back to that legislature. Just imagine, you'd have that law today if everybody in this room would have called 10 times to the state legislature, to the governor, to people who make a difference, the people who lead you. They're your representatives. And even though the law is only going to say they're only blocked for children, that doesn't matter. Go into your local local library and tell your library board you want all computers in your family, in your community library, blocked. There's no law that says they can't be. There's no constitutional right to view pornography on library computers. So if your library 3 months from now is still unblocked, that's on you. You can make a difference. Survey your community. If you got a porn shop, strip club, something in your community or neighboring community, get rid of them. You have the power to do that. I was telling a group yesterday about a group like Citizens for Decency that went out to a strip club. They tried to get rid of this. The city tried to get rid of it, couldn't get rid of it. Or it wasn't a strip club, it was a porn shop. And they developed the chocolate chip cookie campaign. Baked cookies, and every man that went in there, they gave him this little bag of chocolate chip cookies, and it had on a little saying about keeping clean. And what happened? People were too embarrassed to go into that porn shop, and it shut down. So join the war on pornography.
Now, if you never go to court, then you're never going to have an opportunity to apply a community standard. Obviously, in Rexburg, you don't need that. Idaho Falls. But in Pocatello, I told them this morning that if you don't prosecute these places, that's just like McDonald's or any other business person who does a feasibility study. They look at the community before they come in, and they want to know, where is law enforcement on this? Where are the citizens? Where are the elected officials? And they will come in, because if a community like this does not have any sexual-oriented businesses, I guarantee you that they're looking at you. And they're looking at Idaho Falls. And they're looking for a place to come in. So you need to stand up now. And that's what this is all about. That's why Craig Copey and the Citizens for Decency are here, and why you need to support them. And you need to come together, and you need to make enough noise to make sure that your community has the highest possible community standards. And we zoned, licensed, and regulated, even though we didn't have any. And that's what needs to be done here in Idaho Falls and every other city across America before they come. I went to city council and I said, we need to zone places for sexual-oriented businesses. They said, are you crazy? We don't have any. Why would we want to zone a place for them to open? Answer, if you don't zone them, they can open up anywhere they want to, and you can't stop them, like on Main Street, and there's nothing you can do about it. They will be grandfathered in. Once they're in, it's too late. So in Cincinnati, we zoned 6 different places for them to open. And we worked with the zoning commission, and we found 6 lovely spots for them. One right beside the dump, one down on the Ohio River where they processed scrap metal, and out on the east side of town where the junkyards were, we put them right between 2 junkyards, and we thought that would be a good place for them. Well, you know, they've never opened, and that was 12 years ago when we did this. And so I would suggest that you do the same thing, and you do it now. Find yourself a nice wheat field and say that's where you need to go. You don't even have to give them a building. You don't have to give them anything. All you have to do is provide a road, water, and electricity, and you can zone them anywhere you want to. It's their job to build the building and also to buy the property from the person who owns it. And in many cities, they've zoned properties that they knew who owned the property, and they knew they would probably never sell. And the person who owned the property put in their deed a restriction that you could never, ever, ever open up a section rate business on this property. And that deed goes from purchaser to purchaser. It's a lifelong deed. Now, that's not our problem. I mean, the guy that owns a property doesn't have to sell to him, but you get the picture. There's a way to win this battle.
With some of these things, I have found 3 things to be quite helpful. When I go in to share my concern or share my thought, I really try to have the background to it, to have a basic knowledge of why it might be harmful and why it is offensive, and just have some accurate facts for them. Second of all is gentle persuasion. Ask kindly. It is human nature when someone backs you into a corner to push back aggressively. That's just pretty much our makeup. But when you go in and say, you know, I'm feeling a little bit uncomfortable about this, I'm really not sure how to do it, but I have to tell you that this bothers me, or I don't really approve of this movie being in our community, or what some of the things that are happening in the schools make me feel uncomfortable. Can you tell me what we might be able to do, to fix this problem? People are so much more responsive if they don't feel like they're being backed into a corner. And then finally, we've got to believe that most people really are good. They want good communities. They want strength here. And they, hopefully, as you present them with accurate facts, the reason why you're doing this, you've got to believe in the goodwill of others, that people will help you.
But I encourage you never to stay in a hotel that carries pornography, and ask when you check in. And if you absolutely have to stay in that hotel, then tell them to block it and tell them you're not happy, and then make a phone call to Marriott or Hilton or whoever it is and tell them that you don't want to stay in hotels like that. It's not a safe place. We have a website, cleanhotels.com, where we've surveyed all the hotels in America, Phil and our organization, where you can go there and you can even book your hotel, but you don't have to. We don't care about that. We're not in it to make money at all. In fact, we lose money all the time on it. But we want you just to go to see where the clean hotels are so that you can stay in a hotel that you feel can be safe for your family.
Why isn't there some responsibility on the part of the federal government when they don't enforce the laws? Well, there is, and unfortunately it's called the election. And when we elect these people, they're going to determine the lives of your children. And you can't sue them for not enforcing the law. We actually had, in our efforts in Congress, we got nearly half the United States Senate and 75 House members to sign letters to the Attorney General of the United States pointing out the harm from pornography and demanding that he enforce the law. That was this last April, to Attorney General Eric Holder. He just ignored them. And then, a couple of weeks later, he went before Congress. He has to go before an oversight hearing in the Judiciary Committee of the House and the Senate. And he was point blank asked, does adult pornography lead to sexual trafficking? He said yes. Does it lead to violence against women? He said yes. Does it lead someone to go from adult to child pornography? He said yes. And then he was asked, why don't you enforce the laws to stop this? And he mumbled something to the effect that, oh yeah, we're doing that and I'm not sure what the figures are. And that was the last of it. You know, these public officials seem today to think they're not answerable to us. That's why elections are so important.
If you want to win, you've got to elect the right people to office. Our number one agenda this year, we have 7 staff, $700,000 budget. Our number one agenda this year is to register people to vote, educate them, and get them out to vote. And we question every candidate that runs for public office in the state of Ohio. In what we call dog catcher year, where you have, township trustees and school board, we have 16,000 candidates during that year when they have everybody on the ballot. We questioned every one of them, and we asked them, where do you stand on life? Where do you stand on marriage? Where do you stand on the economy? Where do you stand on enforcing Ohio's obscenity law? Where do you stand on zoning, licensing, and regulating of sex businesses? And we want them on the record. Well, that's what we found out, because we have the right people in office in Cincinnati, and we've been able to keep them out.
Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain, college professor in Maine, Bowdoin College, started talking to his students about the war, how patriotic it was. Go help the Union. Help the Union. Let's win this war. His fellow faculty members said, Joshua, all the students are leaving and going to join the war. You're an academic professor. You're supposed to hate war. Shh, don't do that. He couldn't quit. So finally they went to the president. They said, you know what? He just doesn't get it. Let's send him to Europe for a sabbatical for a couple of years, and this little thing will be over anyway. We can beat the South in a year. That's what they thought, of course, then. So they said, you're going to England. You have a sabbatical. Bye. We love you. We want you back. You're a great professor, but you're not going to work now. He didn't go to England. He went straight to the governor of Maine and enlisted and became an officer because of his education. He didn't even like to hunt. He would sit there, he and his brother Tom, and he would look at the deer, and Tom would say, shoot it. And he would look at it. He liked nature. He was more of a tender kind of guy. His father, who was a military war hero in the Revolutionary War, was mad and angry at one point in his life that he didn't go into the military. But nevertheless, when the time came, he did. His wife was angry. She said, why are you going to fight? You're going to go get killed. And then the boys won't have a father, and I won't have a husband. And what difference can one person make? You're going to go die, and nothing's going to happen, and then we're going to be stuck, and you won't have made any difference. I know, but I've got to go. He went. He ended up at the Battle of Gettysburg. Colonel Vincent took him to the end of the line and said, Chamberlain, you're the end of the line. Took him to a place, a little inconspicuous knoll at the end of the line called Little Round Top, which we now have heard of. And he said, you and the 20th Maine, all 300 and something of you, are to defend this spot. And he said, you're the end of the Union line. You cannot, he said, surrender this position. Do you understand? He said, yes. He said, I repeat, if you surrender, we will be flanked, and the whole Union line will fold. So they sat there for a couple of hours listening to the battle, and they thought, right, we're not going to see any battle here. And then they heard the Confederates, and Longstreet sent thousands of Confederates and Texas divisions, Alabama divisions, up through the trees, wave after wave with the Confederate war cry. Casualty after casualty. They suffered at least a third casualties. They were down to only one man on the line. And they were desperate. And then his men started to say, we don't have bullets, sir. We don't have bullets. We're out, all down the line. His sergeant said, we have to surrender. We can't hold off another wave. At that point, he did something for which he received the Medal of Honor. He walked out in front of the line, took his bayonet out, put it on the end of his gun, and told them to fix their bayonets. Then as they heard the Confederates come through, he turned around and ran down the hill, and they followed him. And he said, charge. The Confederates thought reinforcements had come, threw down their guns, and he captured the whole group. As they sat there and guarded them, one of his sergeants, as he was guarding a group of Confederates with their hands up, said, oh, sir, I don't have any bullets in this gun. And he went, shh. He did receive the Medal of Honor for his actions that day. He did go on to become the president of Bowdoin College and the governor of Maine. He did have a distinguished career. But I like the term that was used in his citation for what he did at Gettysburg on Little Round Top. Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain, they said, refused the line. I hope that each of us today will leave, that we will reach out with a hand of understanding and hope as we become warriors. Every one of us enlists in this battle, and we refuse the line.
These are your kids. This is your community. I come in and I present and then I leave. And you've got to figure out how to deal with this. And Citizens for Decency is one of those avenues.
Let me conclude with some advice. Humbly conclude with some advice. First of all, get involved. And I see so many young people here. Get involved. The community that you live in didn't get there by accident. as I said in the introduction, there's a few people, relative few people, that keep that community a place that you want to live. Get involved with Citizens for Decency. It doesn't take your fortune. It won't take all your time, but if everybody pulls the load is easier. And the community stays clean. And your children, your family can stay clean. Help Citizens for Decency. Give them a few dollars a month, $10 a month, $20 a month. Sacrificial giving, that's important, or you'll lose your community. I can't count the number of communities that I've been in. And I used to work to try to help communities get sexually oriented businesses out, the sex shops, the strip clubs. And people say, I don't know how we got here. Well, I know how they got there. People didn't stand up, like Craig Cobia stands up. Don't let him stand up alone.
Let me tell you something. You have a golden opportunity here. We've been all over the country. We've spoken to a lot of groups. Don't wait till the problem gets bad before you say we got to do something. You have an opportunity now. You need to be fired up. You need to support this organization financially, and you need to give them whatever they need, your name, your address, your email address, so they can communicate with you. We're not talking about doing this full time. We're talking about everybody coming together, and if everybody does a little bit, Rexburg will continue to be a great community with high community standards.
Lastly, the principle of remembering who and what are on our side. That's so easy to forget. I know in the work that I do, it's easy to get discouraged. This is a dark, heavy topic, and you encounter more out there in the world that are for pornography or that don't understand its impact. And it's tiring, it can wear you down. But in my own life, I remember to pull back and recommit and think about who is on my side and what is on my side. And even though the numbers seem lopsided, I take assurance in knowing that some of the finest people I know, some of them are here today that have spoken and that are representing and standing out on this issue. Incredible people are on the right side of this issue, and we need to remember that, even if our efforts seem puny or outnumbered out there. We can make a difference. And spiritually speaking, I take great comfort in the biblical teaching and verse found in 2 Kings verse 16, which says, "Fear not, for they that be with us are more than they that be with them." And for a couple of years, that verse was typed out and framed in my bathroom, and I would read that before doing speaking engagements or work, that it truly, even though our worldly eyes see that we're outnumbered, spiritually speaking, I know there are hosts behind us and rallying us, and that pornography cannot win. It cannot win, and that's the take-home message that I'd like to leave in closing, that the light is always stronger than the darkness. That's a true principle that we've learned. And that pornography is rooted in fraudulent messages. It is not founded upon principles that can sustain themselves. And even though we are riding out a wave and tsunami of sorts on this issue now, I believe and know in time this will be clear to all of us and to everyone, the destruction and effects this material has. It cannot win.